Hi, my name is Benjamin Duke, and I am a painter seeking to be an artist. And I went to school at the University of Utah for my undergraduate degree, where I studied with Paul Davis. And then I did my master's degree at the Maryland Institute College of Art, where I studied with Grace Hartigan and Dominique Nahas at the Hofburger School of Painting. I now live in East Lansing, Michigan, and teach at Michigan State University. So a general overview of my work is me looking to make paintings that respond to my understanding of the world. So it begins with a kind of subjective experience, me thinking about my life and my interests, but then also bouncing that against the world. So in terms of my studio practice or my visualizing practice, it starts with drawing often, where I'm working out design and composition. You might think of it like the underlying geometry of a work. I think a lot about someone like Richard Diebenkorn, the way he just breaks down divisions of the picture plane. But then within that, and in my drawings, I will use an abstract approach where I start to scribble and draw circles and then start to populate those compositions with figures, which kind of leads into larger narratives. Sometimes those narratives are personal, and sometimes, like in this show, those narratives have a touch point in history. So in this current exhibition titled Chance Factor, I'm bringing something new into my practice, which is using historical events as a kind of touchstone for some of the work. There's a way in which history comes at me as a kind of conundrum. I've been simultaneously intrigued, but then also disturbed to learn a little bit more about my family history, which happens to be Mormon history, and the settling of the American West. But then there's also some things that are just things that are really intriguing to me, things that start to speak to some of the more extreme experiences that people can confront. So for example, there is a painting titled In the Land of Nod, and it's a story of the whaling ship Essex, which happens to be right behind me. And that's a story of a whaling ship that was sunk by a whale. And then, of course, the real human consequences of the decisions that get made. I find that this kind of confrontation with history, while my initial engagement with history is that it is safely in the past. You know, I think about some of the talk about the end of history and how we've moved into a safer contemporary present, but then finding that as the world seems, at least in my experience, to become more chaotic, I feel in a way thrust back into history, or really it's just a recognition that we were already there. So there's this kind of contention with basic premises, like premises of truth, premises of community, and how do we form those things and understand those things when we are existing in subjective worlds that are these like overlapping bubbles. So the kind of intersubjectivity that we experience. So if I think about what I would want someone to take away from the exhibition is, first, I would want them to come to the exhibition and then walk around and experience the art. I think a lot about narrative when I'm making my work, and so an encounter with the kinds of stories is something that I hope people would kind of dig into. You know, I hope there's hooks that draw people in. Sometimes those hooks are just visual ideas. You know, I think a lot about why does a painting need to be seen to be understood, you know, to be experienced. So come on down, experience the work. And then beyond that, these stories, they begin from other things like historical narrative, but then also they end with the kinds of stories that I build in the studio. And I would really hope that there could be a way that it sparks discussion. So a kind of paintings as excuse for conversation, you know. So these narratives reflect some things that I'm trying to push out into the world, but then when I get to talk to other people about the work, then I'd love to hear their stories, you know, their understanding of the work, maybe as a way into hearing more about them. My future plans in the immediate present is to wrap up the semester of teaching, and then I've got a large mural that I'm going to be making for the city of East Lansing. They've given me a year to work on this image, so it's going to be a little bit more complicated and monumental than some of my other murals. That's going to be right into the summer. Beyond that, I really want to focus on extending some of the historical narrative work and diving a little bit more into my own Mormon history and the history of the American West, which I find to be intriguing and at times problematic, especially the way that it brings up questions of epistemology. How do we know what we know? Questions of truth, questions of community, questions of justice, and hopefully those paintings will be large and as monumental as my imagination. So.